someone like Martin Luther King Jr., what did the guy say that was so offensive? Hey, we're all equal. Shut up! Why was it so offensive then? Because it spoke to something that we all knew was true, and yet we had to reconcile that with the fact that we were living lives that did not reflect that truth. That we were living lives in a society that actually perpetuated this idea that we're not equal. And even if we try to mask it with language like separate but equal. And so his very existence and the things he was saying that we would have to hear made us recognize the hypocrites that we were. And that creates a cognitive dissonance, which is destructive to our psyches, our own senses of ourselves. How can you possibly live, have this idea that we're all created in God's image and that we're all equal, but that some people are more equal than others, and then go home at the end of the day and try to teach your children about right and wrong? My struggle isn't that at all. It's easy. There's right and there's wrong. There's moral, there's immoral, there's good and there's evil. If you're the person who comes along and says all that stuff is subjective, then don't put your struggle on me, man. That's up to you to wrestle with. Well, don't they have their own perspective? Yeah, their perspective was evil and it was wrong, it was bad. Well, who are you to say? Well, who are you to question who I am? If you really believe it, you would never say something like that. But that tells you we don't actually believe it. That's why it bothers us when someone comes along and says there's good and there's evil, there's right and there's wrong. Because intuitively, we know it. But we're so conditioned to not be willing to acknowledge right and wrong or good and evil. And that's what causes us to behave in some of the worst ways, the ugliest ways for some of the most beautiful things. Because we don't know how to achieve beauty without being ugly. But we don't know how to. But you can know. It's just so hard. I should ask ChatGPT, how do I do it? All right, hear me out. Hear me out. I think you guys understand this better. Does anybody know who Ted Kaczynski is? He was a domestic terrorist. Very long story short, you should look into the guy. The guy is fascinating. So he goes to Harvard when he's only 16 years old. Incredibly high IQ. Graduates, earns his PhD from the University of Michigan. He then gets a teaching professorship over at Berkeley. And he's only like 23 years old or something like that. And that's incredibly young to have a full professorship. He only does it for a short while, like a year or two. The students say they can't stand him, no one can relate to him because he's a bit odd. But something happens to him particularly while he's at Harvard. We find out later on, by the way, he was experimented on against his knowledge by one of the professors over there who kind of like, his name is Murphy, who kind of took him under his wing and mentored him, I guess it were. So we now kind of know that guy was involved in a government program to kind of see what you could do if you torture people mentally. And so he was part of this program without even knowing that he was. Anyways, the guy gets out of college, goes to be a professor, only teaches for I want to say it's like a year or something like that. It's not for very long at all. And then he just says, no more of this. And he has these ideas essentially saying that technology is overcoming humanity. Meaning that the promise of technology was that it would allow us to, what's that?
I know this one.
Tell it. Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, very close to it, actually. So we have to work very hard for technology. I mean, so he said that we have all this technology we start to develop, but the promise of technology is that it gives us more time. So for example, when you look at a washing machine, a dryer, those things, man, it's hard to explain. It's hard to express. Any of you guys know people who don't have washers or dryers? I mean, access to them at all? Like not even like a laundromat, but they have to like villagers where they don't have access to it. Anybody? Yeah. And so you guys will know that doing laundry, that's like an all day or 2 day thing. You get down, you have to wash it by hand, and you have to rinse it by hand, and then you have to hang it and dry it. And then, any of you guys already struggle to fold your laundry? Yeah, they have to do the whole shebang from the beginning to the end. And oftentimes you get done with that, and then the very next day, you gotta start it all over again because you've got more laundry. So laundry is a constant thing. It's taking up days. So the washing machine comes along, and then you just put it in there, put some soap in, you walk away from it. And you come back in 45 minutes, half hour, whatever, it's done, you can throw it in the dryer. and then you're done. And that frees up so much time. So now the question becomes, what do you do with all of that time that was freed up? And the promise of this stuff was all this free time. And what could you do with it? Well, you could watch this new invention called the television. And then, whoa, so I can do that, and then my time is freed up for all of this entertainment. Yeah. And then we started inventing the dishwasher, the vacuum, like all these. And so all of these things freed us up. So now, that's a continuous process of technology. So now cell phones used to be free, by the way. You would just sign up for a plan, and then they would just give you the phone. Now they make you pay for the phone and pay for the plan. And so if I were to ask you, like, how much is your cell phone bill every month? $100 or so, whatever. But now it's gotten to the point where this no longer frees you up for free time. In other words, the promise of the smartphone was that it was so efficient. It would make you more efficient. It would make you far more efficient at work, and you'd be able to get a whole bunch of tasks done quickly. You can pay your bills immediately and all that. But what it actually ends up doing now is we have to work now, more work, to have the thing that's supposed to free up free time. But it's not actually giving us any extra free time. It's not giving us much free time at all. Instead, we're working now because it's an entertainment device that distracts us, and then it's constantly advertising to us. So the idea is that technology used to be a thing that would serve us, but now we've gotten to the point where it's like, I have to work. Why? Because I have to have a cell phone. Why? So I can stay connected through social media, so I can watch the latest movies. So in other words, we now serve technology. And then he predicts that eventually you'll get to a point where we start to incorporate technology into our bodies, where we're going to have like brain chips and things like this. Even then, I'm thinking, we're having a meeting this Friday in our English department. We were just talking about it, where we're trying to develop policies for AI use in the classroom. In other words, how can artificial intelligence be used ethically within a classroom? You can start to figure out the problems with that, as most of you are staring at your phones as you are right now. What is an ethical use? What is AI? What is the purpose of AI? What does it do? What's that? To help. Explain help. To do the work for you is what it really is. It's not designed to like we say, oh no, but you can use it for, oh yeah, and you can use your phone for emergencies. But how often do we use it for emergencies? Never. Yeah, very, very, very rarely. We always use it for something else. And so there are things that are helpful in the sense of it does it for me. So now, I mean, I could learn rhetoric. I could learn how arguments are formed. I could read this person's text and I could annotate it, and I could try to figure out what their argumentative structure is. I could analyze their points. I could then question it within myself. Are these actually valid points? And then I could figure out how well that view aligns with my view. But first, of course, I had to figure out what my view is. That takes a long time. Or I could just go to ChatGPT, write an analytical essay about this, and it comes out in seconds. Did that help you? And you might be like, yeah, because I got a diploma now. Yeah, but you realize what happens is that diploma now is meaningless. And so it's not actually helping us at all. Are there uses for it that can help? Yeah, I suppose so, but in a high school classroom, there's like zero use for it that's actually helpful in the proper way. Because this is where you're supposed to be learning the skill set. And if you learn a proper skill set here, there are applications for how AI can be useful and helpful. But that isn't here, because here it does all that learning, all that work of learning for you. The whole purpose of doing work here is to practice the skill set and then demonstrate a mastery of the skill set. It isn't just to do work. That's what always drives us crazy when I hear people, like students will say, oh, I do my work. So I do my work. It sounds like you have an hourly job you go to every day. Like I do my work and I clock out and I go home. Yeah, it's more than that, man. It's are you getting something? Are you getting a skill set out of it? Are you learning how to think? Are you learning how to demonstrate that you know how to think? I actually hear this from people. They'll be like, but it's so hard. Well, yeah. Name something in life that's worthwhile doing, or that at least that's rewarding in some way. I mean, if you're doing it properly, even listening to music is hard. And so the question then becomes, what do you do with this technology? So we have this meeting on Friday to try to figure this thing out for next year. I don't know, I'm curious to see what happens. But one thing I can be sure of is that my view is going to fail. I know that everything I'm telling you right now is going to fail because we can all hear it and go, I hear what you're saying, Scanlon, but I really want to go watch this movie instead of do an essay. I hear what you're saying, Scanlon, but it's so easy just to do this. And then like submit it to you, but like put 2 spaces between the words because you think if I do that, you won't be able to detect that I used AI to do this because it won't pop up on the AI detectors. And it's so funny because we're having to come up with these ways of doing these backflips to try, and we're like kicking and screaming, going like, I am not going to become better. I'm going to hand over my thinking to faceless, nameless algorithms, which are designed by people. And that's a hell of a question then. Why would people want you to have shortcuts to thinking? Why don't they want you to learn how to think? And this is all the stuff that Ted Kaczynski is warning about. And he writes this, but the way he tries to get attention for it is he sends bombs to people. In the mail. It's why he's called the Unabomber. They thought that the bombs were being, because originally the first few bombs were sent to people at universities. And the reason he was doing it was because he was sending it to people who were in charge of developing technology that he thought was destructive to mankind and would eventually lead to what we have today. So he wasn't a very good bomber. He killed almost nobody he was trying to kill, but he killed like people who worked in mailrooms. If you send a letter to the CEO of Apple, do you think the CEO of Apple is going to get your letter?
Nope.
Good. He won't. What will happen is the secretary will get it, and she will read it, and then she will determine whether or not the CEO needs to see this. Chances of him needing to see it are pretty low. So if you send a package to the CEO of Apple, she's not going to go, ooh, he got a present, and go take it to him. They're going to open it themselves. And so a few secretaries got their hands blown off, literally. And he wasn't very good at the bombs. He wasn't very good at getting them to the right people. He tried to blow up an airplane. That didn't work out for him. But he carried on this procedure for 20 years, something like that. Every few years, sending one of these things. And the reason he was so hard to capture was because when he walked away from Berkeley, he moved into a cabin in Montana, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. And he had no running water, he had no electricity, he went completely off the grid, rode a bike, made his own food, farmed his own food. And the thing that finally set him off, that sent him off to do this bombing stuff, was there was an area that he used to like to go hiking in because it was all like pristine wilderness where he lived. It was like away from people. And a company came in one day and he just heard machines and over there and they're like logging out the area and they're gonna build something there in the middle of nowhere. And he was just like, dude, we're gonna have no planet left. So he's an environmentalist, he's an ecologist. And so in the early, mid-90s, I think it was, he wrote a manifesto and said, and sent it to some newspapers and said, if you publish this, I will stop bombing. He just wanted his ideas to be heard. So the newspaper, it was the New York Times, I think it was, maybe the New York Post, they printed it against law enforcement, told them, don't do it, because if you do that, you're giving in to them. But they did it. And that's how he got discovered. Because, the phrase, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So that's wrongly stated. That's the wrong way to say it. It's kind of like when you say, I couldn't care less. I could care less. That's not the right way to say it. It's supposed to be I couldn't care less. You guys ever heard of your forte? Like the thing that you're an expert in? That's my forte. It's not pronounced forte. It's pronounced fort. It's not a French word. It's an English word. But you can be that person at parties when someone says, well, that's not my forte. You go, actually, it's pronounced fort. You could be that guy. And if you did that, people would say, what an asshole. And that's how they'd remember you. Remember that one asshole at the party who corrected forte to fort? Yeah, I remember that guy. Well, Ted Kaczynski was that guy. So if you ever went to Ted Kaczynski and you said, well, Ted, you can't have your cake and eat it too, he would say, well, actually, the proper phrase is, you can't eat your cake and have it. Okay. Problem is he put that in his manifesto. So people who knew him, including his brother, was reading it. The ideas sound like the kind of stuff his brother says, and then he gets to that part and he goes, oh shit. Actually, it was his wife who first saw it. She said, I think your brother wrote this. Why? And then she showed him that phrase where he used, you can't have your cake and eat it. And he goes, oh shit, I think David wrote this. I think Ted wrote this. His brother's name was David. So that's how he got caught. The point of it is that if you read his manifesto back then when it was published, and I did, you look at it and go, this guy's off the wall, man. This guy's a crazy kook, whatever. And then you fast forward to 2025, and if you read it, some of you might be like, maybe, yeah. And by the way, I've read it, again, I read it back then, I read it again not too long ago, because he died just a few years ago. And when I read it, I hear people criticizing it, and people are criticizing it on the grounds and just saying, the guy was crazy. He was a terrible writer. Okay, nice. But what about his ideas? Dude, the guy was nuts. The guy sent bombs, if you can believe it. I know, he blew up some fingers. Terrible bomb maker. I'll criticize him on that ground. He was a terrible bomb maker. Mine are way more effective. But how are his ideas? And when you look at his ideas now, you might say, maybe he was onto something 30 years ago. Maybe technology has gone too far. Maybe we're now living in a way that we're actually serving the technology rather than the technology serving us. Maybe it's not actually making our lives better or easier. Maybe it's actually going to lead to the complete downfall of mankind. But that wasn't something that a lot of people said until he died. Like I said, he died not too long ago. I want to say like a year or two ago. And all of a sudden I saw these videos popping up all over the internet. You know, was Kaczynski wrong? Was Ted wrong? I think we have a quote from him coming up, by the way. We almost read sections of that this year, but we're not going to get around to it. That will top the year that I gave my students the ISIS manifesto as they're reading.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that one. The principal did not have a sense of humor about that one. Yeah, but here's the thing: we hate the prophets because they're crazy. Can you believe what they're saying about us? There's something wrong with them, right?
Absolutely.
Dude, you're Santa Claus. Does that bother you?
I mean, what?
You're Santa Claus. Does that bother you? Yeah, why not?
He gives gifts.
He gives gifts. Any other reasons bother you? Is it true that you're Santa Claus? You follow? Don't we react viscerally to people when we know they're right? Yeah. One of two things is happening. Either they're so completely wrong that they're wrong in a way that's destructive, or we know they're right. We just don't like it. And then afterwards, there's plenty of time to feel bad. You ever do something in the moment, like maybe crap talk someone behind their back, and afterwards you're like, I shouldn't have said that. Even if you were joking, that was probably too much. Yeah. There's always lots of time afterwards to feel bad, but in the moment, man, kill that guy. Why? Because he's telling us the nature of the human soul. Can you believe it? Socrates? You've talked about that. What happens if you try to change the world? Yeah, you get shot, you get killed. And sometimes people get killed because they are off the wall. If you're ever interested in that, go look up Rasputin and read about his life. That guy needed to go. Although he refused. The guy got shot like 7 times. They tried to drown him, they tried to strangle him. The dude kept coming back. Yeah,
Wasn't he like poisoned like twice or something?
Yeah, they poisoned him. He survived it. And this is all, by the way, this is all in one night. This isn't like over the course of years. Yeah, shot him. He got back up. They drowned him in the river, and they walked away. And the dude was like crawling himself out of the river. This guy refused to die. I want to say they finally cut his head off or something like that. And then I finally did it. I don't remember what it was exactly, but you can look it up. But by and large, it's like they say things that we know are true. And then that bothers us because we know that it's true. Like you look at someone like I said, you look at someone like Martin Luther King Jr. What did the guy say that was so offensive? Hey, we're all equal. Shut up! Why was it so offensive then? Because it spoke to something that we all knew was true, and yet we had to reconcile that with the fact that we were living lives that did not reflect that truth. That we were living lives in a society that actually perpetuated this idea that we're not equal. And even if we try to mask it with language like separate but equal. And so his very existence and the things he was saying that we would have to hear made us recognize the hypocrites that we were. And that creates a cognitive dissonance, which is destructive to our psyches, our own senses of ourselves. How can you possibly have this idea that we're all created in God's image and that we're all equal, but that some people are more equal than others. And then go home at the end of the day and try to teach your children about right and wrong. You recognize that there's a hypocrisy that's there, that's in you, and it tears you away. And I guess there are two choices in life. Fix yourself. That was the first article we read all school year. Fix yourself. Or kill them. And here's the thing. You can kill them and stop them from talking, but you still haven't fixed yourself. In fact, you've made yourself worse because now you're a hypocrite and you're a murderer. You're probably hiding it, so you're probably also a liar. You'll probably also start piling up all of the negative things. And so when you look at, not putting myself in the same category, but like I was talking to a class not too long ago, and one of my students said that I was a controversial figure. And I asked, what do I say that's so controversial? And he's like, oh, just like, the way you talk, the stuff you say. Like what? Believe in yourselves. Fix yourself. Make yourself better. Achieve the things that you could possibly achieve because you're capable of it. I believe in you. Believe in yourselves. Don't give up. Life is difficult, but great things can be had from it. Persevere. Yeah, fuck that guy. I know what it is. It's because I say the word fuck at the end of that sentence. That's what's considered so controversial. But that's not really controversial. All that is that's just an excuse to dismiss what I'm saying. And it's not what I'm saying. That's the irony of it. It's what Dostoevsky is saying. It's what Jung is saying. It's what Nietzsche is saying. It's what Aldous is saying. It's what all of these greatest minds in history are saying. And that's what drives us crazy, because we know it's true. What makes them so brilliant is not that they have some kind of a unique idea. It's that they're telling us the obvious ideas that we missed. And we miss it, and we shouldn't. But it's hard to, because that means we have to kind of, examine ourselves, look inside of ourselves, see what we're capable of, believe in ourselves, realize how special and precious we are. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah.
Yes, so there's one on this topic right now. I don't really sound controversial, but do you think that Hitler was a good leader?
Actually, this was interesting. So last period, I made this point. Watch. Hitler. Jesus. Muhammad. In the last period, I said Hitler, everyone's just kind of like looking. I said Jesus. I saw people actually get, I saw just naturally, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? Isn't that weird? I can sit up here all day and go, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Stalin, Hitler. We're like, oh, whatever, Jesus. Whoa. What's he going to say? You're not supposed to talk about that. Muhammad, hey, what's he going to say? What's he going to draw? If you know, then that's funny. But for some reason, I can talk about Hitler all day. It doesn't bother us one single bit. I don't know if that helps you to illustrate this as well. But do I think Hitler was a good leader? Depends on, no. He was not. Because do I think he was an effective leader? No. I got news for you guys, in case you didn't get to the end of the history book. He lost. Yeah, people say that because they want to be edgy. Oh, but he was a great leader. Dude, the guy lost. And he didn't just lose, he lost in spectacular fashion. And he didn't just lose in spectacular fashion, he did it in a way that he intentionally sacrificed the people he was supposed to be serving. That will tip you off. Did the guy serve people? No, he served himself. He wasn't a leader. The guy was a megalomaniac. The guy was a power-hungry megalomaniac. The guy was a narcissist. But for some reason, we celebrate this edgy thing of saying, oh, but he was a good leader. No, he lost. He lost badly, collapsed his economy, did everything wrong. And if you want to use that word good in there, he was not a good person in the process. He didn't even have good aims. He didn't even have ethical aims. Oh, but it's a matter of perspective, isn't it? Oh, that's where you fall into that. If you think that ethics and morals are subjective, that's your battle. That's your struggle, not mine. My struggle isn't that at all. It's easy. There's right and there's wrong. There's moral and there's immoral. There's good and there's evil. If you're the person who comes along and says, oh, that stuff is subjective, then don't put your struggle on me, man. That's up to you. to wrestle with. Well, don't they have their own perspective? Yeah, their perspective was evil and it was wrong, it was bad. Well, who are you to say? Well, who are you to question who I am? If you really believe it, you would never say something like that. But that tells you we don't actually believe it. That's why it bothers us when someone comes along and says there's good and there's evil, there's right and there's wrong. Because intuitively, we know it. But we're so conditioned to not be willing to acknowledge right and wrong or good and evil. And we're so conditioned to believe some incredibly outrageous things. And that's what causes us to behave in some of the worst ways, the ugliest ways for some of the most beautiful things. Because we don't know how to achieve beauty without being ugly. But we don't know how to. But you can know. It's just so hard. I should ask ChatGPT, how do I do it? Yeah.